What if an entire country just fell apart? It sounds like fiction, but for some European nations it's a real threat. Today, we're revealing the European countries experts believe could face major collapse in 2025. Economic meltdowns, political chaos, and social unrest that could reshape the continent. We've dug into expert analysis, economic data, and geopolitical trends to bring you the real story. We'll break down why each country is on the brink, from crushing debt to political time bombs. Even one collapse could trigger a domino effect across the globe. We've ranked these countries, and the last one will shock you. Stick around. What you're about to see will blow your mind. First up is Greece, a country whose financial troubles have become almost legendary in modern Europe. For years, Greece has been seen as the epicenter of Europe's economic crises, a symbol of what can go wrong when debt spirals out of control. Despite multiple international bailouts and promises of reform, Greece's core problems, sky-high public debt and weak economic growth, have never truly disappeared. The numbers may shift, but the underlying issues remain stubbornly persistent. The government is forced to spend a huge chunk of its annual budget just on interest payments, leaving precious little for essential services like hospitals, schools, or even basic infrastructure. Everyday life is affected and public frustration grows. Years of harsh austerity measures have led to stubbornly high unemployment and a devastating brain drain as young, educated Greeks leave in search of better opportunities abroad, draining the country of its future potential. On top of economic woes, geopolitical tensions with neighboring Turkey force Greece to spend billions on defense every year, putting even more pressure on already strained finances and leaving little room for recovery. The Greek economy relies heavily on tourism, a sector that can collapse overnight with global shocks, whether it's a pandemic, a financial crisis, or political instability elsewhere. Any major disruption, another pandemic, a global recession, or even a regional conflict, could be catastrophic for Greece, pushing it back to the brink. The European Union has stepped in before to prevent disaster, but with new crises erupting across the continent, future support for Greece is far from guaranteed. The term Grexit may have faded from the headlines, but the risk of a Greek collapse is more real than ever, lurking just beneath the surface. Greece's suffocating debt, mounting social strain, and relentless external pressures make it a ticking time bomb for Europe and beyond. Experts agree. At this point, it's not a question of if another crisis will hit Greece, but when. The warning signs are everywhere. The world should be watching closely, because what happens in Greece rarely stays in Greece. Greece's next crisis could send shockwaves through all of Europe, with consequences that reach far beyond its borders. Next, Italy, a country renowned for its breathtaking beauty, rich culture, and centuries of history, but also a nation grappling with deep political chaos and persistent economic stagnation that has lasted for years. Italy stands as the Eurozone's third largest economy, a crucial pillar in the European financial system. If Italy were to falter, the entire European project could be thrown into jeopardy, threatening the stability of the EU itself. Chronic political instability, nearly 70 different governments since World War II, makes meaningful, long-term reform nearly impossible, as leaders rarely stay in power long enough to enact real change. Italy's national debt is enormous, second only to Greece in the Eurozone, but on a much larger scale that poses a far greater risk to the continent. If investors lose confidence, borrowing costs could spiral out of control, potentially triggering a full-blown financial crisis that would ripple across Europe. Deep divides between the prosperous north and the struggling south fuel social tension, resentment, and the rise of populist movements, making unity even harder to achieve. The banking sector is weighed down by a mountain of bad loans, threatening the stability of the entire economy and putting ordinary Italians at risk. Meanwhile, an aging population and one of the world's lowest birth rates strain the pension system, with fewer young workers left to support a growing number of retirees. The European Central Bank continues to prop up Italian debt, buying time, but this support cannot last forever and is not a permanent solution. Any major shock, whether political or economic, could push Italy over the edge, setting off a chain reaction across the continent. The fallout would be catastrophic, not just for Italy, but for all of Europe, threatening the very fabric of the European Union. Italy is a giant standing on shaky ground, its future uncertain and its challenges immense. The world can't afford to ignore these warning signs. Italy's crisis could become everyone's crisis. Spain, famous for its culture and beaches, faces deep economic troubles. Youth unemployment remains among the highest in Europe, with entire generations struggling to find work. This leads to brain drain and social unrest as young people leave for better prospects. Spain's economy is heavily reliant on tourism and construction, sectors that collapse quickly in a crisis. Regional tensions, especially in Catalonia, create political instability and scare off investors. High public debt limits the government's ability to invest in the future. The pension system is under threat, with fewer workers supporting more retirees. Attempts at reform spark protests, but inaction risks total collapse. Spain is caught in a perfect storm: unemployment, over-reliance on fragile sectors, secessionist movements, and unsustainable debt. The sunny image hides a precarious reality. One global shock could tip Spain into crisis. The stakes are higher than ever. Spain is walking a tightrope and the winds are picking up. Portugal was once widely praised for its impressive recovery after the Eurozone crisis, with many seeing it as a model for economic resilience. But beneath the surface, this comeback is far more fragile than it appears. Today, much of Portugal's economic growth depends heavily on tourism and foreign real estate investment. While these sectors bring in money, they also drive up property prices, making it increasingly difficult for locals to afford housing and fueling a deepening housing crisis. This over-reliance on tourism leaves Portugal dangerously exposed to global shocks. Just one unexpected event, like a pandemic or economic downturn, could devastate the entire economy almost overnight. Most jobs in tourism are low-wage, seasonal and unstable, offering little security or opportunity for advancement. These are not the kinds of jobs that can sustain a strong, resilient economy in the long run. Meanwhile, public debt remains stubbornly high, severely limiting the government's ability to respond to new crises or invest in the future. Low productivity and a lack of innovation keep the economy stuck in traditional, less competitive industries, making it hard for Portugal to keep up with more dynamic European economies. The banking sector, still recovering from the scars of past bailouts, remains vulnerable and exposed to any potential downturns or financial shocks. A sharp recession could easily trigger another banking crisis, putting the entire financial system at risk once again. The recovery, though visible on the surface, is shallow, masking deep, unresolved structural weaknesses that threaten long-term stability. As locals are increasingly priced out of their own cities, social tensions are rising, with more people taking to the streets to demand change and affordable housing. Portugal is like a patient just out of the hospital, walking, but still at high risk of relapse and far from fully recovered. The next global shock, whether economic or otherwise, could easily send the country back to the emergency room, undoing years of hard-won progress. Portugal's story is a warning to the world. Recovery can be an illusion, and without real change, the risks remain just beneath the surface. Hungary's crisis is less about debt and more about political isolation. The government's clashes with the EU over democracy and rule of law have led to billions in withheld funding. This uncertainty scares off investors and threatens economic stability. Hungary's economy depends on foreign manufacturing, especially German car companies, making it vulnerable to global industry shifts. Unpredictable policies and special taxes further erode investor confidence. High inflation and a weakening currency add to the pressure. Political disputes make it harder to stabilize the economy. Hungary's close ties with Russia and China put it at odds with Western allies, risking further isolation. If these bets fail, Hungary could become a pariah in the heart of Europe. The crisis is largely self-inflicted, a warning of how political choices can have dire economic consequences. Hungary is gambling with its future. The stakes couldn't be higher. Romania is a country with huge potential, but corruption is holding it back. Corruption acts like a hidden tax, inflating costs and draining resources from public services. Billions in EU funds have been wasted or mismanaged, leaving infrastructure underdeveloped. Public trust in institutions is low, fueling protests and social unrest. Corruption scares away foreign investors and stifles honest businesses. The result, a massive brain drain as millions of young, educated Romanians leave for better opportunities abroad. Romania's infrastructure lags behind, hampering economic growth. The country faces demographic decline with an aging population and shrinking workforce. As a NATO member bordering Ukraine, Romania faces added security and refugee pressures. Geopolitical instability only adds to the risk. If Romania can't tackle corruption, its economic potential will remain unrealized. The fight against graft is a battle for the country's future. Without reform, collapse is a real possibility. Ukraine is a nation fighting for survival, enduring devastation not seen in Europe since World War II. The war with Russia has destroyed cities, factories and farmland, shrinking the economy by a third in a single year. Millions have been displaced and a significant portion of the workforce is on the front lines. Ukraine's government and military rely almost entirely on Western aid. Any drop in support could trigger immediate collapse. Russia's attacks on infrastructure threaten basic survival. Keeping the lights on is a daily struggle. Even if the war ends, rebuilding will cost hundreds of billions with no easy path to recovery. The threat of renewed conflict makes investment risky. Ukraine is not just at risk of collapse, it's resisting it every day. Its survival depends on continued Western support. The stakes are global. A collapse would have far-reaching consequences. Ukraine's resilience is remarkable, but the situation remains on a knife's edge. The world cannot look away. 7 European countries, each facing unique crises that could lead to collapse. From Greece's debt to Hungary's political isolation and Ukraine's existential fight, Europe's stability is more fragile than it seems. The dominoes are lined up. Anyone could fall and trigger a global shock. Which country surprised you most? Did we miss one? Let us know in the comments. If you found this eye-opening, subscribe for more deep dives. Thanks for watching and being part of the conversation. Stay tuned, there's much more to come.